Okay, so this is block number 2, and thought I would do a video on this one because block number 1 really didn't have much applique to it. It was just kind of the basics, get you going. So this one has 15 steps to it, so I thought that we would go through this one. So I've already done I've hooped my muslin, I've already done my outline, step 1. So now I'm going to put on my fleece, and I'm going to, instead of having you just watch it stitch, I'm going to go ahead and stitch it. And I think I laid down the background. I have to look and see what's first, but if it's the same as if I'm laying down the border, I'll do a couple of steps that I think you already know, and then we'll go from there. I've done step 1, which is the batting. That's been tacked down. The next thing it asked me to do is put the border fabric on, the same as we did in the first video on block 1, and make sure you change your color to whatever color you're doing these in. I changed mine to blue. That seems to show up a little bit better. And now before I go to the next step, which is 4, I'm going to trim. So I'm going to make sure I come in at this angle, trim across here, and come in and go out at this angle, and leave the 3 sides alone that are on the seam allowance. Nope, I gotta do it. Gotta switch around here. Otherwise my hand will be right in your face. So I'm coming in at my angle. My scissors are flat. I'm holding down sort of like, I guess with my knuckles a little bit, or my fingers, or my hand here, as I'm pulling up this fabric to trim it. Keeping my scissors flat, and then again coming out at that angle. So the angle coming across and the angle down. I'm going to re-hoop it and do the next step, which is step 4. And I'm referring to the steps 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the same on when you print out your color chart. When you're doing something that has applique, it is actually steps, not just changing the thread colors. So my next step 4 is tack down and detail background fabric. So that means I've got to place it on here. And see, if I placed it this way, I don't have enough left to right. So I gotta turn it around without tipping the camera over. See if I can do that. It's my cameraman's day off today, which is just a joke because I am the cameraman. So I'm out on each side. I'm up in the back part, so I'm up past the stitching, 1/2 inch, and I'm over here. I want to be over by a little bit. If you do it too close, the fabric kind of gets, gets pushed this way, and it might leave a gap. So you want to make sure you're over by whatever you can that leaves you a 1/2 inch at the top. And I've got plenty. So I'm down probably, more than 1/4, a little less than 1/2. And let's see, this is my background, so I've got to change my thread. I should have done that before I put the camera on, but let me go ahead and do that now. Again, I'm pulling the thread through. Getting my white thread ready. If I could do this as a live webinar, it'd be a good time for you to ask me any excuse me, any questions. If you do have any questions, I think you can post them below the video, or you can go to my website, www.therightspot.com, and there's a page there that you can send me a question or comment. Let me thread my needle. So this is going to go around, hold my fabric down. It's also going to do a few little dots, or I guess they're sort of like snowflakes. Then I'm going to come back and I will trim just this side where these two are meeting, because I have to trim wherever there's not a seam allowance. So seam allowance to the right, seam allowance to the top, seam allowance to the left. I'm not going to touch those. That's what's nice about this. Not a lot of trimming here. And I will trim this. Okay, so I've gone ahead with the white background. I've trimmed it down just here with the edges both slanted down. I've done the outline, so I'm on number 6. This is the outline of the mitten. So I'm going to put the mitten fabric on. Again, I want to make sure that I'm out in this 1/2 inch seam allowance. I want to make sure I'm past the stitching, the placement stitching of the mitten. And so number 6 says tack down mitten fabric. So I've switched to my purple thread. And it's doing the outline. And now I'm going to take my hoop off so I can trim that mitten. So let me move this over to here. Get my hoop. And you can see the outlines here is probably a little hard to see. So I'm not going to trim out here. Remember, this is the seam allowance. So I'm going to trim everywhere but the seam allowance. So I got some little corners I have to get into. And when I get to this edge, again, I'm going to come out on that, oh, for Pete's sakes, come out on that angle. You can see right there. Well, I've got to turn my hoop around so it's easier for me to cut. And then just this one last side. And again, I'm coming in on the angle on my seam allowance. Coming around the little thumb. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and hoop it and continue on. We've done the mitten. We've done the trimming, it's done the outline stitching, and then there was a little snowflake to go in it. And it came over here to do the next section. So this is the placement for the coat or the sleeve. And again, I want to make sure I have this 1/2 inch over on, oh, let me turn this a little bit, here we go. Make sure I have this 1/2 inch past my stitching for my seam allowance. I just want to double check, make sure I'm over on all the sides, and don't forget about the top. Make sure I've switched my thread to the right color. I'm threaded. Oh, no, I'm not threaded. Oop. Okay, now I'm threaded and ready to go. So this is going to do the tack down. We're on number 10. So it's a tack down in the detail of the coat sleeve. So what we're doing is this part right here. So this, it's going to do this stitching. Okay, here, look here. it's going to do this stitching. This stitching, sorry. And first, before we do the trim out. So I'm going to go ahead and let it do the stitching, and once I get to the trim out part, I'll show you how that's done. The stitching has been done for the outline, and I'm not sure if you can see the, let's see if I can turn it. The stitching going this way, so it gives it kind of a ribbed. You can feel the ribbed of it. You probably can't, yeah, maybe you can see it there. So now I have to make sure I'm going to trim out 3 sides, because you always know what to trim because it's on the fabric side. On the fabric, oops, sorry, on the fabric side, and over here, remember, is that seam allowance. So I'll get it trimmed. Remember, I'm going to come in at an angle. I don't have much angle here because I didn't have all that much extra. And remember that when you pull your fabric up, you want to hold the hooped part down. I was trying to figure out which way it was going here. At the same time. And again, turn it so that it's easy for you. Don't try to keep reaching around and not turn it. Just turn it around. And you're getting as close to the stitches as possible. And then again, I'm at this end, so I'm going to just come down to my end and then come out on an angle. So I'm not sure if you can see this. Oops, sorry. I'm not sure if you can see, that's a different line of stitching. So there's a line of stitching right there, and I'm getting as close as I possibly can. If you snip a couple stitches, it's all right, because it's going to do, see how it's got this big satin stitch? So it's going to do a big stitch, so you'll be all right. But it just takes time and practice, and after a while you can get pretty good at it. And having these scissors, the duckbill or applique scissors, works really well. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back on for my next section.